Tonight, a single desperate and secret phone call brings down the biggest child protective bust in U.S. history. 462 children, 100 women literally hauled off by the busload from behind the walls of a remote, isolated Texas compound. This after reports of systematic marriage and childbirth forced on girls as young as 13. Then allegations of physical and sex abuse of little boys on that compound. Plus, 41 known children with broken bones. CPS taking all 400-plus children into custody. A crime lab on wheels, DNA testing every child placed in foster care across Texas, while other jurisdictions turn a blind eye to the alleged rampant child abuse behind the walls of these gated compounds. The Lone Star State heads to legal battle.
I do not know where my children are, but there is 4 children out there of mine, and I intend to get them before this is over. And a daughter and my grandson, and I intend for them to come back to the ranch. My name is Kathleen Jessup, and I stand for freedom. And while we were over there, it felt like that in the land of the free and the home of the brave, we were the Jews taken to the concentration camps, persecuted for our religion.
Please help us get our children back. We need our children.
Good evening. I'm Nancy Grace. I want to thank you for being with us. Right now, straight out to Michael Board with WOAI News Radio. Michael, what's the latest?
Well, these individual custody hearings began last week. They're going to continue again this week. Each child and the lawyers for the parents will get to go before a judge in San Angelo and plead their case. Basically, what it is they're getting a service plan, a blueprint for them to get their kids back. And CPS says, yes, their goal is to reunite as many of these kids with their parents as possible, as long as the parents give them a clean and abuse-free place to live.
What's disturbing to me, Michael Board, is that right now there are about 100 children who have not been matched up with any parents. What about them?
And it's even more disturbing is that there's some people here who the mom will show up and the father will not. We've talked about this a lot, Nancy. A lot of the fathers are not showing up for DNA testing, and they're not showing up for these trials either. To give you an example, there was a 17-year-old mom who went before a judge last week. Her husband, her spiritual husband or her regular husband, it didn't matter, any man was not there. She's 17, she has a 1-year-old child. Do the math, Nancy. It makes sense that she conceived that child when she was 15 years old. Also, she's pregnant with another child. It's going to be a long road for her to get either of those kids back.
Michael, bottom line, will these women have to actually separate from their religion, their so-called religion, and their husbands in order to get their kids back? Because, like you just said, we see the 17-year-old showing up in court without the father.
Well, in the service plans that were given to each of the parents, it says nothing in there about religion. It does not say specifically you must give up your religion in order to get your kids back. But what it does say is you need to provide a house that is free from abuse. It's hard to believe that any judge will give a child back to a mother if they're still living in the same house on this compound with 1 husband, 9 wives, and 30-something kids. I don't know about you, but that does not sound like a house free from abuse.
You know, back to Mike Brooks, former Fed with the FBI. Mike, I've got a question. It seems to me that it will be very possible for the judge to impose this service plan on these moms. Dads are all the no-shows. But the minute they get the kids, how can we ensure that they're going to, A, stay in the jurisdiction to be monitored, and B, adhere to the service plan?
We can't guarantee that at all, Nancy, because they've been deceptive the whole time. The fathers back at the compound have been telling the mothers what to say, what to tell the kids. They've been coaching the kids. You got to get the kids out of that whole environment. You know, they talk about a home free of abuse. We're talking physical abuse and mental abuse, Nancy.
A big issue out to Defense Attorney Ray Giudice, joining us from the Atlanta jurisdiction. Raymond, right now, this has all been about CPS, Child Protective Services, but all of the DNA tests and what they are learning from these interviews from these children, I predict, will be brought into evidence at criminal trials. Is that possible?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, those tests, there's a good search warrant that we've discussed it on previous shows, that it was founded on good faith basis. The continued search are finding records and documents that clearly indicate a pattern of deception and almost a scheme or a plan to prevent the state from enforcing the polygamy laws and the child abuse laws. So, I mean, I give these judges a lot of credit. This is a major problem. You've got people lying and maybe even lying under oath in court, and they've got to do something to get to the bottom. At the end of the day, this is about protecting the young children and protecting these very young women from further abuse.
Well, one issue and a harbinger, so to speak, that we saw last week is that the Texas Attorney General has now been given authority, actually ordered by the judge, to handle any possible criminal prosecutions. It was just overwhelming the local district attorney's office. Now, it seems to me that they are paving the way for a criminal prosecution, and if so, Ray Giudice, what will the charges be?
Well, the major charges that I would be concerned about if I was one of these gentlemen would be statutory rape, child abuse. Those are the ones that can put you away for the rest of your life. We've talked on earlier shows about the welfare fraud issues and maybe the child labor law violations, and they're obviously serious, but they're de minimis compared to consent, lack of consent for statutory rape. There is no consent to rape if you're under the age of consent. And as the reporter just stated, when you clock these women's birth dates back from their conception dates of these young children, that's going to be Exhibit A for the statutory rape, child molestation charges.
With me tonight, Dr. Patricia Saunders. Dr. Saunders, we've seen so many interviews with the women of the FLDS, and we've heard that they're brainwashed, but I notice that they are very articulate. They are very cohesive when they speak, and they always manage to have a response and at the same time dodge all questions about their ages, their last names, how old they were when they married and gave birth, whether there are underage spiritual marriages behind compound walls. To me, they're crazy like a fox.
Exactly, Nancy. This is what we see with coercive persuasion. I'd rather use that term than brainwashing, because they're not torturing them. They're totally controlling their environment, and they're indoctrinated into a belief system by charismatic leaders who offer salvation. They tell them what to think, how to think, when to think it. They dismiss any kind of critical thinking or questions, and these women experience a sense of safety and security in being the same, in being sweet little girls with prairie dresses.
I want to go to Dr. Marty McCary from Johns Hopkins University. Dr. McCary, the charges or the allegations, there are no formal charges, criminal charges yet anyway, that little boys have been abused as well on that compound, physically and sexually. It's my understanding that this is based on journals, writings, and interviews with the little boys now in state custody. How can that be corroborated physically?
Well, investigators are going to look for any signs of injury in the private parts of these children. They're going to have to be subjected to clinical examinations that can be humiliating. They'll be looking for scars, injuries, any sign of trauma. And the DNA is going to say a lot, because if the mother's 25 and the kid is 12 years old, guess what age she got conceived? So it's going to tell us a lot more.
So are you referring to like a pelvic exam for women and essentially the equivalent for men?
Essentially sort of what we call an external rectal exam. You look at the perineum or the bottom side, and you look for any signs of injury, which unfortunately when you look at these, they're painful to look at, because you know the harm and pain that incurred when this actually happened.
Well, you know, alert for you, Dr. McCary, women have been enduring pelvic examinations for many, many hundreds of years, so I think the guys will get through it, okay? I want to go back out to Mike Brooks. Mike Brooks, regarding these Bishop's papers, these so-called Bishop's papers that seemingly document as many wives as up to 21 for certain people. Will that come into evidence, and how can we ensure its veracity, the truth of the papers?
Well, Nancy, I thought when I first heard about this, I thought it was a treasure trove, you know, almost a jackpot when it comes to evidence, because it's in the writing. It's in the writing of the handwriting of the different men who have all the wives and children. And in fact, it even has some of the wives size of 16. But yes, it should come into court as evidence, but it could be dated. So then you have to go back and part of the interviews, even with these children. And keep in mind, Nancy, back a while ago, when we first started talking about this, there were 6 women who they put in a safe house. They could play a pivotal role as witnesses against the people in the compound, against these men for statutory rape and these kind of charges, but the information from inside, because, Nancy, they're very, very closed society. But if you get these 6 women to open up and say, yes, I know these people, I know this family, yes, this is all true, it could be a treasure trove leading to a conviction.
Back to Michael Borwood, WOAI News Radio. Michael, another issue that's going to be a real speed bump, if not a roadblock, for any kind of criminal prosecution is how this whole thing started, the genesis of the raid. That single cell phone call from seemingly a desperate young girl who had been forced into some arranged marriage. It looks like it was a hoax. All right, what can you tell me about that?
Yeah, apparently it was a hoax because the woman who they were searching for apparently has not shown up in court yet. They don't expect her to show up. I talked to the Department of Public Safety here in Texas. They say all charges have been dropped in this investigation. If you remember when this whole event started, it was a call from a 16-year-old named Sarah to a child abuse hotline in San Angelo, Texas, saying that she was raped by her spiritual husband. They interviewed that spiritual husband. All charges have been dropped against her. They believe that this hoax phone call was made by a woman in Colorado Springs, Colorado. They've apparently traced it back to her. But remember, that could come into play with the criminal charges. With the child welfare cases, you don't need Sarah there because it was when they got onto this compound that they found out that there were young women who were either pregnant or already had kids. And once they saw that, that was enough burden in the state of Texas to remove the kids and place them in temporary custody.
And the whole theory behind that, Ray Giudice, is if the police are rightfully there, in other words, if they believe that original call, even if it turns out to be a hoax, and they are rightfully within the compound walls and they see evidence of wrongdoing, that will hold up in court.
That's right. Now, first of all, it's going to be challenged by the defense lawyers. That's their job, and they need to test it constitutionally. But the Supreme Court has ruled that if law enforcement is acting in good faith, now, that's going to be the test. Were the officers sitting in their offices saying, boy, we just need any little bit of tip, and we're going out there guns blazing, and we're going to round everybody up, that could be ruled pretextual. In other words, I'm following a car, and I'm just waiting for that car to make any kind of little traffic stop because I think there's a drunk driver or a carload of drugs in that car. So the officer's actions are going to be what's critical to the test, not as much as the confidential informant who may in fact be a fraud.
Well, her name allegedly is Rosita Swinton, if she in fact made the phone call. What do we know about her, Mike Brooks?
We know that she has a history of making calls like this in the past. And, you know, they've talked to her.
Like what?
Calling up and saying that there was some untoward things going on and dealing with a sexual nature. I mean, this woman has a history of making fraudulent phone calls. You know, the Texas Rangers were finally able to track her down, and you know, she ought to be also held, you know, held accountable and also possibly do some jail time for making a false police report. But again, as Ray said, law enforcement went into that compound acting in good faith.
Ray Giudice, will she, if it's true, will she ever be prosecuted for it?
Yeah, it's possible, Nancy. You know, abuse of 911 calls or obstruction of justice, those charges do come up every once in a while. If you've got somebody that's got a pattern, it could be punished and it could be prosecuted. But can I just add in, Mike touched a very sensitive topic here on this lady's potential prior calls. That may in fact lead to the pretextual argument that I was arguing about earlier for the defense lawyers, that law enforcement should have screened this call out.
Blah, blah, blah. So you're telling me they should run a rap sheet. It's not even a rap sheet on a woman they don't know anything about. And on the other hand, girls may be being sexually abused at that moment behind compound walls. Is that what I'm hearing from you, Ray Giudice?
What you're hearing from me is that is going to be a challenge by the defendant's lawyers that's going to go all the way up to the Texas State Supreme Court to say, did the law enforcement have a burden to know that this lady was a repeat offender?
Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid filed a writ of mandamus with the Third Court of Appeals in Austin, Texas, on behalf of these mothers, where we argued the state did not follow Texas law when they took these children without providing any evidence that these households were creating abusive environments. The Third Court of Appeals ruled on this matter, and they stated that Child Protective Services had no evidence that these children were in imminent danger and that CPS acted hastily in removing them from their families. According to the court, the existence of the FLDS belief system, as described by the department's witnesses, by itself does not put children of FLDS parents in physical danger.
They want their kids back, and I think that is what they're going to get.
This is a very, very drastic step that the state of Texas has taken, to see that families can be ripped apart from their children without evidence.
To see that an agency that's supposed to be concerned with protecting children is actually putting them through quite possibly the most abusive situation they've ever been in.
I intend to get them before this is over, and I intend for them to come back to the ranch.
Biggest child protective bust in U.S. history at a secluded Texas compound. In a stunning turn of events, the mothers actually leave their children behind, voluntarily returning to that gated compound, all the while refusing to address the alleged systematic marriages of underage girls to much, much older men.
All right, here we go. This is an extraordinary moment. For the first time in 4 years since this facility has been out here, they are allowing us inside the gate. We just passed through, and now we're going onto one of the main roads inside the gate. We immediately drove through what seemed to be a construction zone. There was heavy equipment parked everywhere. Then we saw several large wooden buildings, living quarters, we were told. Just the sense I get of just looking here for this first few moments, this place seems to be huge. One thing I am noticing, the direction we're going seems to be away from the temple, and that we're going into what looks like maybe one of the residential areas. We're pulling over here. This must be our location. We'll see what happens. On a balcony, women stood watching, clearly upset. Below, mothers were eager to send one message, that they are the victims.
They told us before we moved that they would take the children and the mothers together and put them in one compound together. All of us, all of the people together. That was a lie.
No questions were off limits, but some answers were difficult to find. Is there any time where a woman 16 years or younger is married out here?
We just want our children back. We're not here to talk about ourselves. We just want our children back.
But that's why the children are not here, and that's why I'm asking these questions, so I hope you don't mind.
Do you want to know what they did today?
More than 50 of the mothers had been returned to the compound only an hour before by bus. 6 mothers chose not to return. The rest are still staying with the youngest children. Investigators encountered problems trying to get simple information like names and ages. I had the same problem. Questions about age were frequently met with hesitation. How old were you when you married?
My child is 21.
And you? And how old are you now?
I'm 32. 31.
Almost all the women declined to give their last name. In all the conversations, there was only one confirmation that teens are married here. Are there any young women ages 16 and under who marry out here, and how often does that happen?
It's not real common.
How young would you say the youngest girl you see married out here?
Probably 16.
All of the women said the charges of abuse were not true, that no one is forced to marry, and the woman named Sarah who first alerted authorities does not live here.
Someone that has once lived here and been mad and turned against Trader.
They've set this whole thing up to bring persecution against us. It's the worst insurrection that's happened in the United States.
I left with still more questions. Some of them apparently won't be answered until custody cases go to court. David Mattingly, CNN, El Dorado, Texas.
Next, the FLDS moms, after 400-plus children rescued from that remote Texas compound.
I need 480 tons of plaster. I need 70.
With their children in state custody after allegations underage girls forced to marry much older men and give birth, FLDS moms voluntarily returned to the gated compound, all claiming they were misled by Texas authorities. But authorities say the so-called plural wives stonewalling police. Are they choosing polygamy and the husbands they share with each other over their own children?
What has happened is so outrageous. I am totally shocked that the American public has allowed this, that the United States would stoop to this. We have been peaceful through all of this, and you take any society on the face of the earth, for that matter, and there would be so many people dead by now, much bloodshed. We have been peaceful. Now where is the American public to defend us? No one has fought back. Our children have witnessed their fathers, our husbands on their knees, praying as they defiled our temple. They went in. They have taken everything sacred. Our children's purity is sacred to us. Our children are all we have left. Where is the American public to defend us? We have been peaceful.
Ma'am, I need to get some clarification from you. You say it's voluntary, but to your knowledge, have women as young as 13, 14, and 15 been marrying adult men in this compound?
I don't have personal knowledge of anybody that young, and that is the truth.
May I ask how old you were when you married?
I was 23.
What do you have to say about the allegations of the child abuse?
That it was all based on a phone call. I cannot believe they would uproot a little community over a phone call that somebody made up. There is no girl named that names.
Are there teenage women here, teenage women being married to adult men, girls 16 and under?
That's not for me to say.
Come down here.
It's not my place to say.
What would you like to say to the American public who's watching this?
Please help us get our children back. We need our children. Thank you.
I see people have tears there. Ma'am, can I ask you why you're crying? Are you happy to be back?
Would you cry if your children were taken from you?
When we come back, bombshell. New details emerge. Dozens of children documented with broken bones.
Can I please tell the children goodbye? No, just you go to the bus. No, you can't ask anything.
We all knew about the alleged systematic marriages and childbirths forced on girls as young as 13, and the full-scale investigation into alleged rampant physical and sex abuse on little boys on that compound. But now, another nightmare. 41 children documented with injuries, including broken bones. 41 broken bones. Now allegations of sex abuse on the little boys as well. And overnight, a teenage girl gives birth, an underage girl gives birth. Out to Michael Board with WOAI News Radio, joining us there in San Antonio. Michael, what's going on?
Yeah, that's a good question, Nancy. What is going on? Yesterday we heard that an 18-year-old girl, or maybe someone who was younger than 18, gave birth to a child. She did give birth to a very happy, healthy little baby boy. But the question is, how old is she? The people there at the hospital and CPS investigators do not believe she's 18 years old. Now, the attorney for this group, this polygamous cult, came out and said, oh, no, she's over 18, don't worry. But, Nancy, really, you have to take everything that this group says with a grain of salt. Today in Austin, we heard the head of Texas Child Protective Services go through one instance after another about how their investigators were lied to and deceived from the moment they set foot on this compound.
In fact, it's my understanding, Michael Board, that the children and the mothers who were taken into the Coliseum, rescued off that compound, they were identified in various groups and were given bracelet identifications, and that the moms went around and tore up the bracelets, marked off the names on the bracelets, swapped bracelets. Why? I don't understand this.
Well, here's something that'll shock you even more. The head of Texas Child Protective Services, who was talking today in Austin, told us, who are listening in on what he was saying, that there was one instance where the investigators were on the compound starting to interview these teenage girls. They sat down with one teenage girl they believed to be very young, and they said, honey, how old are you? She gave them a blank stare. She looked up at her spiritual husband and said, "How old am I?" He turned to her and said, "You're 18. The girl turned to the investigator and said, "I'm 18 years old."
To Jana Boyle with the San Angelo Standard Times. Jana, thank you for being with us. Can you please explain to me 41 broken bones on these children?
Yes, that's what was reported today. It's these 41 broken bones, and not necessarily current broken bones, but they do say that they don't have all the X-ray or medical information. So it's kind of too early to draw conclusions based on that information.
Michael Board, what can you tell me about the 41 broken bones?
Well, some of them were multiple broken bones like they were talking about. And you think about, you know, what could cause this? Is it signs of abuse like some people think it is? Well, that is one possibility. But you also have to think about this, Nancy. What causes brittle bones? Genetics.
Brittle bones? Whoa. Brittle
Genetics.
bones in little children?
Well, that's what the FLDS lawyers are telling everybody.
You're kidding me.
No,
Brittle,
they're saying...
whoa, wait. I've got to call in a doctor right now. Dr. Marty McCary joining us from D.C. He is a physician. He is a professor of public health with Johns Hopkins. Dr. McCary, please. Look, I'm a JD, not a DR like you, but don't even start telling me that 41 children have brittle bones.
It's really hard to imagine. Unless they've been deprived of milk and any source of calcium for their entire childhood, there's no reason to believe that they're predisposed to a higher risk of broken bones.
Back out to Michael Board with WOAI News Radio. Tell me about the medical facility there on the compound. If they would deliver births, and I'm sure that includes cesarean, breech, you name it, blood transfusions, I don't know, did they also handle these broken bones as well on these children?
That's a good question. You're going to have to ask the doctor, who is a member of this sect, who runs the family practice on the compound in El Dorado. You might want to wonder, you know, who is this guy? His name is Dr. Lloyd Barlow. He's got 3 offices for his family practice. One is in Hilldale, Utah, one is in Colorado City, Arizona, and one is in El Dorado, Texas. Yes, he is a member of this sect. You have to believe that he was involved intimately with the birthing of babies, no matter what the age of the women are. Yeah, if there were teenage girls on this compound giving birth, he was there, he would know about it. And yes, we're told Texas Rangers have begun their investigation into Dr. Barlow.
Doctor, what's his first name?
Dr. Lloyd, L-L-O-Y-D, Lloyd Barlow.
The people that founded Yearning for Zion, the Zion compound, it's my understanding were hand-picked and sent there from Arizona. So my question is, Arizona and other states are now saying, well, we are prosecuting too. Other than a few isolated prosecutions, they aren't doing anything. The problem migrates to Texas. They've been there in Texas since 2004, and Texas is finally doing something about it. Do you think the other states are going to take a hint and get busy?
I don't know. It's been happening in Arizona and Colorado.
Utah.
It's been happening there a lot longer than it's been happening here in Texas. Utah, yeah. It's been happening there a lot longer than here in Texas. You would think if they knew, you know, had proof, evidence there that was going on, you would hope that they would have done something a long time ago. Here in Texas, it's, you know, things operate a little bit different here in Texas. We don't take some of the stuff that maybe other states take.
Joining me right now is a very special guest. It is Susan Hayes. She is one of the many, many lawyers representing a 2-year-old FLDS girl. And let me remind you, as much as many people hate lawyers, these lawyers are doing this, many of them, for free, taking it upon themselves to represent these children. Susan, it's a pleasure to have you on. Are you getting the information from CPS and from the government that you need to represent your little girl?
Absolutely not, and I'm furious about it. And what I found is quite the opposite. The family members have been very open with me and with many of the other lawyers, And CPS is sending out press releases with salacious details instead of helping us represent these children.
What salacious details are you talking about?
Well, y'all been talking about on this program, and the hysteria over 41 broken bones. I fell off a horse when I was 6 and broke my arm and a collarbone. It doesn't make my parents child abusers. We need to get to facts and not insinuations and start working these cases instead of CPS worrying about their media image.
So the fact that there are 41 broken bones, if that is in fact true, you find that salacious?
I find the fact it was released when we don't know if it's true salacious. And I find the fact of people saying a girl, we don't know that it's true.
If it's the truth, you still find it wrong that it was released?
I find it wrong that it was released when they haven't notified the 41 attorneys representing those children that their kids may be in physical abuse situations. The attorneys need the information to do their jobs. Because the attorneys are all emailing each other asking when is CPS going to tell us?
463, you're in contact with all of them?
As much as we can be in contact, because the court system in Texas still doesn't have a good list of us, which is ridiculous.
This is only about a month old. Don't you realize how much CPS is overwhelmed? You know,
And I very much blame the state of Texas for not giving them the resources they need to do their job.
They should have just left all the kids on that compound, Susan, and let them continue to get broken bones naturally like you did.
No, Nancy, when I represent a kid in court, I need to know when there are hearings in that case or orders coming out in that case, and we're not right now.
But why are
the
you
district
blaming
clerk's office
CPS?
out there
They're
doesn't have
clearly
enough
doing all they
resources to handle the case.
Next, investigative jackpot. Handwritten evidence found hidden in a secret compound safe inside a limestone temple deep behind compound wall.
It's been an industry leader for generations.
A truck and a pair of overalls in Vancouver was run down by a police car and thrown to the side of the road. The guy led police on a 30-minute chase after reportedly threatening to blow up a bridge. After the takedown,